said EEG. Yes? Ah, all right. All right, that hurt really bad, I know it did. But take what I just told you with the physiology and write it on that tiny diagram. That is the simplest corticothalamic diagram I can. And start without the pluses and minuses on it. Just kind of get an idea of where things are in that loop, and it will simplify things, I think, for you. Now we're going to look at how we actually record an EEG signal. And basically, what do you need to record one? Basically, you need about $200 to record the simplest EEG. You can actually buy them online and use them yourself. They're very simple. They're not at all like the ones that we use here, although they have a filtering algorithm that I've been exploring that might actually make their data better, a more resilient artifact than the ones that we use in the lab. I haven't quite looked, I'm just saying they're new, they're interesting. All right, we're going to talk about, hey, how do we define it? And I say heuristics, just rules of thumb. How do we define it on the head? And then the waveforms, and then artifact, alpha, delta, and beta. For the loops that we're going to be looking at in here, the alpha loop is the one that we're going to be looking at. It's going to be in the parietal lobe predominantly, and when we talk about vision, it's going to be alpha. When we talk about movement, it's going to be the mu rhythm. When we talk about attention, it's going to be theta, which I skipped for no apparent reason, and we're going to talk about the thinking, the close-knit loops, like from one region directly to another, those short fiber loops, and those are mostly beta activity. It's very small, very fast activity. There are a lot of other waveforms we are not going to talk about. These are the big boys. Yes?
I've heard of alpha wave, or it's like in the brain,
Uh-huh.
when it comes to sleep. Is that similar? The same?
Identical.
Okay.
So you're right
Okay.
in the ballpark there. It's exactly that. I will next time bring just a quick demonstration of what happens as we fall asleep with the different waveforms, just so you can take a look at it. So it will help you, know what's going on in my head when I fall asleep. So this is what you need. You need somebody with EEG. You need an EEG cap. These are electrodes. This is a terrible picture of somebody wearing the electrode cap. The electrodes simply fit on the head, and they're going to measure electrical output of the brain through the skin, the skull, the fat, the muscle, and the meninges. So there's a lot, and the big things, if you can imagine, your eye blinks are so much bigger than your EEG. We're measuring a teeny tiny signal, so it's got to be a pretty good amplifier in there. And so we have an amplifier. They come in a lot of different varieties. The incoming ongoing EEG is very small, and then we amplify it to a much larger signal. Every signal is comprised of two things. So we're actually interested in looking at, and then lots of noise. And when I say noise, 1 year, decades ago, while I was recording at 3 p.m. every day, I got some freaky waveforms cycling through my EEG. Couldn't figure it out. Well, as it turns out, I was very lucky because I was working in a building that had underneath it a seismograph. And so I went downstairs and I talked to the guy who ran the seismograph, who was not interested in this at all until I said, there's something coming through my data. And we went back to the point in time and he saw it in his seismograph. What was happening was a plane was flying overhead and shaking the building a little bit. And I picked it up in my EEG, and he picked it up in his seismograph. And so that's noise. That's some serious noise. Other things are you blinked in the middle of the data and messed up my data. You gritted your jaw, messed up my data. Those are also artifacts. We call it all artifact. Most common type of artifact, though, we didn't put this on right. It's the most common thing we do. We didn't put it on right, and it's just yucky and messy and noisy.
Wouldn't it be cool if that was like the beginning of like an X-Files episode, and then it turned out like you knew too much, and there was like a military stealth bomber that was flying overhead, and you tried to like.
It was a radar plane from an army post nearby, and they stopped flying overhead after I called them about it.
You knew too much.
I guess, yes.
Rhythm Link actually makes new EEG sensors that will go into your scalp just a tiny little bit. That work, like they're actually marketing them now. Like they're in like their second like phase of the product they put out, and they're really tiny, and you put them on the scalp and you push it down just a little bit, and it creates an indentation that the sensor sits in, and then it holds it in place.
Those
So
are
they
wonderful
reduce the noise.
as long as you are pristine clean and you're the only one using them. And when I say pristine clean, you are alcohol swab clean, because anything that penetrates your skin, if
Well,
it's
they're
not,
one-time use too.
if your hair is dirty or you have product in your hair and you stick a needle in and any of that dirt gets in, it can actually cause a cyst. So I'm always wary about those, but they're brilliant. They're wonderful as long as you are.
These don't actually penetrate, they just create, like they use pressure to create an indentation, and once the indentation is formed, the sensor actually sits in that indentation, and they have something that sits on a ring that sits on the outside to maintain that pressure, so it gives you a solid like connectivity and reduces the noise from the connection, but without like breaking the skin barrier.
We will have to talk about that more, because I have not heard of that,
Yeah.
and that sounds
They're
pretty
really cool. They actually came to my class 2 weeks ago and showed them to us.
I
we
have got to see it.
see some of the prototypes.
I've got to see it.
Yep.
All right, electrical potential. Here's about it. Electrical potential is a weird word. The word potential is weird. We're not measuring electrical output of your brain. We're measuring an electrical potential. And you can think of it as electric pressure, and this is a metaphor. I'm not being sciencey here. So if we look at 2 points, point 1 and point 2, or 2 points here on the head, when pressure is uniform, there's no current flowing. So if this is pushing equally hard against that, nothing is happening. JP, will you come up for a second? Yeah. I'm going to be an electrode, he's going to be an electrode. All right, come here. And put your hand against mine, and push back with equal pressure. See, nothing's happening. Now I'm going to let go a little. Whoop, the wave moved this way. Now I'm going to push against him, move that way, push against me. That's potential. It's the pressure between the two. Woo! We scienced. Thank you. So that is all that is happening, is this pressure moving back and forth. That's what we're measuring.
So in a way, it's like pressure, but it really isn't.
Right, it's like pressure. It's a measure of force, but it's not in newtons or anything like that. It's electrical. And so here we have it moving back and forth, and this is the waveform that we typically see. So it's moving kind of back and forth across the scalp. And in theory, if we're doing this well, let's say that we're measuring it, and at point 1, we know the potential is 0. Let's pretend it's 0. It's never 0 on your head, but we're measuring it from your ear or from the tip of your nose where there's very little electrical activity, so we could say it's 0. We can get a perfect measure of what's going on at point 2, a relatively perfect measure. So we can say what's going on at point 2. However, that is never what happens. This is more what we see from a head at the top here. We see a variety of things going on, and that is because all of these waveforms together are, all of these waveforms together, this one and then the 1 plus up there, are all summating together. It's so rude. And so it's very messy. We have to pull them apart. It never looks clean immediately. Now, EEG waveforms can be defined